So, you've read Matthew 28, 19, and 20 and decided that Jesus' words about going into all the world to make disciples sounds like a pretty good idea. But what's this? A global pandemic has turned your routine upside down and changed the whole rhythm of your life. Sounds a bit like Hollywood, but as we all know, that's very much the situation right now. So I guess it would be okay if we put this whole idea of the Great Commission to the side for the moment, right? Wrong. Let's chat about it. Welcome to Clear Creek Chat. That's chat with two T's because this podcast is coming to you from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and is a ministry of the Clear Creek Church of Christ. In each episode, we'll gather a few of our friends together and have a chat about issues that both touch our lives locally and have an impact on the broader kingdom of God. My name is Mitchell Halstead, and today I'm joined by my good friends and fellow ministers, Josh Diggs.
Hey, buddy.
And Evan Aldridge.
Morning, fellas.
Guys, before we jump into this, I want to ask, have you yet partaken of the pumpkin spice? In what capacity? And what should not be pumpkin spiced?
Oh, everything but a pumpkin spice latte.
No,
what I'm saying is everything
limited.
But should not be a pumpkin spice latte. That is the only thing that I think pumpkin spice really works well in. I see disagreement over there.
The OG.
If pumpkin spice was never invented, COVID probably would not have happened. Like, the world would be a better place.
Wow.
If pumpkin spice was not even a thing.
PSL?
This is 5G conspiracy level right here.
For sure.
Man, I don't know that we can be friends. I'm glad we're this far apart. That's good. That's
6
good.
feet.
6 feet.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my life would change not at all if pumpkin spice did not exist.
Yeah, actually, that's fair. I've had one in the past 3 years. So,
But hey, more power to all of those who enjoy and partake.
there you go.
Well, as we teased in the intro today, today's chat is all about discipleship in the pandemic era. So I suppose we ought to start with the simple question, what has changed because of the pandemic?
A lot, right? Really just across the board. Specifically, though, I think talking about discipleship, whenever this first started, I think that our thought was we're going to have to totally redefine what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And the reason for that was so much of our identity was already tied up in followers of Jesus go to church. Like, that's what they do. On Sunday morning, they get up, they go to church. So we go to church, we do church things with church people. But the irony there is, it's not that the definition of what it means to be a follower of Jesus needed to change, because that kind of hasn't changed since, Jesus. It was that our idea of what it meant needed to change. And so I think that has been the biggest shift that I have seen. And it's been a really healthy one in that we have been able to take a step back, kind of look at that, I guess, irreducible minimum of, oh, this is what it means to be a follower of Jesus, and not tie it so strongly to the, albeit good, tradition of going to church on Sunday morning.
Yeah, I like that. I think you're right that a lot of it's just been a simplification and going back to basics. So a lot of the change seems to be really big, but the fact is we're able to more easily do what we were called to do to begin with. So yeah, there's a lot of change there. I think another thing, though, that has sort of played into that, although things have gotten simpler or clearer, how we do it has completely changed, of course. And the embracing of technology has been huge over the past number of months. Up until COVID, we did a live broadcast of our service, but it was sort of the typical single camera show it from a distance. And we're still working to improve a lot of that, but we have embraced the technology available to us, just as the early church embraced the early technology that they had available to them, obviously, whether it was writing letters, Paul in prison, whether it was the road system, whatever else. And throughout history, when we've seen massive cultural changes, that's when the church seems to come alive, and you see an explosion of growth, often because the church has to say, wait, what we used to do may not be the best thing to continue doing. So I think the technology has been a massive shift for us.
Mm-hmm. I guess it was probably 3 years ago that Jake, who's our executive minister here, you guys know him pretty well, he sent me an article, and it was about the rise of virtual small groups. And I remember looking at it and being like, Jake, man, I know what you're saying. I know this is a thing, but how in the world are we supposed to be doing life together in a virtual community? And then fast forward 3 years and like, oh, well,
here we are.
Yeah, here we are. And so it has been really neat to, you look at your circumstances, and a lot of people were kind of ahead of the game on this, but I'm so thankful that we are starting to embrace that and see even our people who may not be the most tech savvy, I guess you could say, really dive into this idea of, hey, I'm committed to taking care of my people no matter what. So if that means me having to get online and fight with Zoom or fight with audio issues and video issues, then I'm going to do that because it's worth it, because it's about taking care of our people.
Hey, let me ask you a question, Evan. Obviously, you've seen a lot of growth with our people on the tech side because of groups. What is something that you've sort of seen that either surprised you or kind of excited you in that process?
I think that the idea of doing a hybrid, like even when things get back to quote unquote normal, whatever that's going to be, a lot of our groups, they take breaks during certain times of the year, and breaks are super important. It's an important thing to do. But, inevitably, you're going to have people that travel. You're going to have people that are in and out. And a lot of our groups are talking about the idea of, hey, if I'm in a hotel room, I can still jump in with my group and be able to have a small group with them. I can still stay connected with them. Right now, we have some of our groups, half the group feels like, hey, we feel comfortable with being in closer proximity to other people. The other half of the group does not yet, and there's no shaming on either direction, but they just simply set a laptop up in the living room, stream in the people that want to do it virtually, and then everybody else is together. And so it's been really neat to just see them, again, just embrace the idea of, hey, this is actually a valid option for how we can live life together.
That's cool. That's cool.
I think one thing that's been real specific is we have seen the need, but also it's been a nice release from this assumption that church is a building. I think we all know this, right? But we still operate very much like church means in the building on Sunday or Wednesday or small group or whatever. And we've been forced to think outside of that. And I think for just the average church goer, it's probably been a good thing that hopefully won't just go back to normal whenever we do go back to quote unquote normal. They'll understand that discipleship is not building based. It is relationship based, which has always been the case. But hopefully that'll be a long-term reorientation for all of our Christians. Let's move into question number 2. What hasn't changed due to the pandemic?
Oh, man. Well, I think we all have noticed that one of the things that has not changed, and if anything has been heightened, is just the clarity of the mission, that we have a world that is in desperate need of hope, not some sort of ethereal, philosophic hope, and also not simply a physical hope, but there's this deep sense that we need more than what we've been getting. In fact, I think going back to your point about the building-based ministry, a lot of people, I think we're settling for an attendance versus the relationship with Jesus. And so through this, the mission has obviously not changed. Our job is to be disciples who make disciples, who then make disciples. It has to be multi-generational. If it is only you and me and us making a generation of disciples, but they can't go beyond that, then we are one generation always away from extinction. And so the mission, I think, is absolutely staying the same. The other thing, though, is the message has not changed on any level. Now, the way we get it out to people, certainly.
Sure.
But as far as the message itself, the message has not changed. People need hope. People need a savior. I think one thing about the pandemic is all of us go away saying, oh, no, we might die. I got news. Everyone's going to die. It's 100% certain. The question is not if, simply when, and are you ready for that moment? And so the message and the mission, I think, have simply been elevated through this. But I don't think that's changed, nor will it.
Sure.
Thank you for that encouraging thought that
You're welcome.
We're all going to die. I appreciate that. To continue in your preacher M alliteration, you've got the mission and you've got the message. I'm going to go with the method, right?
Nice.
Nice.
I see what
Clutch.
you did there.
That was good.
It's almost like we planned that for the podcast.
Oh, my goodness.
Surely not.
Which we kind of didn't. But the idea is this, right? How we make disciples at its core is this idea of inviting someone into the normalcy of your life, which is such a cool phrase that we borrowed from our friends up in Nashville at Ethos Church. But when you invite someone into the normalcy of your life, you are inviting them into basically everything you do. And you go back and look at Jesus, that's what he did. He didn't just invite the disciples to the hillside whenever he was going to preach or to the synagogue when he was going to do some teaching, but he invited them into, for 3 years basically, to walk side by side with him. And what's so great about inviting someone into your normalcy, when your normal changes, which it will, because we're kind of in the middle of a really weird normal right now, when your normal changes, you can still invite someone into whatever your normal is. And when you do that, you are always going to stay relevant, right? You're always going to stay relevant to the times. And so what was normal 10 years ago, what's normal now, what's going to be normal in 10 years, yes, that will look different. But as long as you're inviting them into the normalcy of what your life is, you're always going to be relevant in being able to reach people and start forming that relationship for discipleship.
Yeah, see, I think that is huge. And maybe just to be real practical, think about the, young mom who's got 2 kids at home under the age of 5. Normal for her is going to be going to the park, going to mommy play dates. There's going to be some regular rhythms. There's going to be a nap in the afternoon. Thank you, Jesus. Mm-hmm. That's the normalcy of her life. And so inviting people into that is going to look a certain way. But you're right, as just the regular flow of life with or without pandemic, well, 10 years from now, her normalcy looks different. But she can still invite people into that. And of course, you see that a lot with youth and all the stuff you're doing with Youth World. But I think that's a really brilliant point, because the normalcy may change, but inviting people in never does.
Right.
Oh, that's excellent.
I love it. So we got the message, we got the mission, we got the method. So the question I think we need to kind of land here is, where do we go next? What do we do next to ensure that we as Christians, that, us in this circle as ministry leaders, are making sure that we are focusing on discipleship as one of our primary, goals in this life as a church? Where do we go next?
A lot of what Josh and I talked about, and even I talked about with my wife, Rachel, it's this idea of, okay, the situation of COVID forced us into this crazy new reality, but we learned a lot of really good things, right? We slowed down in a lot of ways. We were able to have more family time, for better or for worse, but we learned a lot of really good things. Now, at some point, we don't know when this is going to be, but at some point, what forced us into this new reality is probably no longer going to be there. And so how do we take what we learned without losing it whenever we go back to what we feel like is kind of that well-worn path, right? We are definitely creatures of habit. And so once we get back to what feels a lot more natural, how in the world can we keep these things? And so that's kind of where I think both mine and Josh's thoughts come from. And for me, it is this idea of just a continued focus on the online space. When you talk about from a potential standpoint, you know that, hey, we know what it's going to be like to have people in our church, right? That's something we've done for years, but I really don't think we have even started to figure out the potential of what does it look like to have people all over the city of Chattanooga, in different houses, but all together, virtually online. And so this idea that we now know we need to put time and energy, kind of get that dual threat, I guess you could say, approach to our ministry, equally focusing on, hey, this is what we're going to be doing in person, but we've got some people out there that we can really reach in this online area. And so I think from a potential standpoint, like, the ceiling is so high, and it's going to be really neat to see kind of what God does through that.
Yeah, I like that. I think, sort of piggyback off that a little bit, there's probably 2 or 3 things that I think going forward. Number one, Evan referenced reaching the city. Our goal as a church is to reach the entire city, but we recognize that the starting point is really about a 10% block. Studies show that if you can change the minds of about 10% of any different group, you change the entire organization, the entire group. It has multiplication impacts. So for us, for Chattanooga, that means we need to reach 18,600 people roughly. So that's what we're shooting
only
for.
That?
Only that. But to do that, of course, that means decentralizing ministry, because we will never get all of those people in one space at one time. So using what Evan said, sort of the air and the land attack approach, the air is going to be digital gospel messaging, but then the land approach is going to be decentralized ministry, where people are going out, starting churches in their homes, whether it's small groups, churches, whatever else we might think. The other piece to that, though, is just really continuing to embrace the sort of the personality of a pioneer versus a settler. Both are important, absolutely, but it's pioneers who take new land, it's settlers who then build up the existing land. And for many years, we've been in settler mode, and that's fine. I believe God's now calling us into a pioneer mode, where he says, this is the next step. You've done well with what I've given you. Let's move into new territory, because to reach the next group of people, we're going to have to step beyond the existing footprint of our building.
Yeah, I think if there was one way to sum it up, we can't just stumble into this. That would be irresponsible. We have to be intentional in all the choices we make, expanding the digital footprint, making our in-person gatherings even more significant and more discipleship based. Whatever we do, it has to be intentional. It has to be purposeful. Otherwise, we've wasted an opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I think that's about all the time we've got for this first podcast. I think it went pretty well. I want to thank Josh and Evan for joining me and sharing their insight today. If you will join us next time, we will continue the conversation around discipleship and your role in spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to your neighbors, throughout your city, and to the ends of the earth. Grace and peace.